All right, everybody, welcome into a special edition, little Auburn, Georgia combination here podcast as Auburn, Georgia get going on Saturday. With me from DawgsHQ is Palmer Thombs. Palmer, what's up, dude?
How you doing, Justin? Doing well over here. Just finished up a Kirby Smart presser on Tuesday as we prepare for this big game. Excited to head to the Plains and excited to see this top 20 matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, it should be an interesting game. DawgsHQ.com for those that are listening on my end, from the Auburn end, DawgsHQ.com if you want to get some Georgia information this week. And then, of course, for my listeners, AuburnLive.com. As always, we're going to sort of talk about this game from both sides, Palmer. I mean, I guess what stands out to me in this game is I don't know the last time. Well, the only team to come into Auburn with this kind of spread, 14.5, has been Alabama recently. Those are maybe 2015 when Auburn wasn't very good, and that stretch where Alabama was so good. So it's pretty rare for somebody to come into Auburn with that kind of spread, especially Auburn sitting here at 4-1. They're ranked and they're a two-plus touchdown underdog. Was that surprising to you? You've seen a lot of Georgia. What's your take on from the Georgia end on the spread in this game coming in? Do you feel like that's right on the money? Do you feel like it's going to be closer? What's your early take?
Yeah, I felt like Vegas was high on the Dogs last weekend too against Arkansas. That was a top 10 game, and that was a 18.5, 19-point spread. So I think the fact that Georgia comes in here at 14.5, like you said, on the road, it says a lot about what Vegas thinks about Georgia. And we both of us know Vegas, wasn't built by being wrong. So it's interesting that Georgia comes in as such a big road favorite. I think that the atmosphere of Jordan-Hare Stadium, it plays such a big factor when Auburn is at home. When the Tigers have that place rocking and they're rolling, it's tough to beat them there. I felt like I was there in 2019 when Auburn put up a little bit of a comeback there, and man, it felt like that stadium was about to burst if they had been able to tie that game up. Georgia ends up pulling away there. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised by that big of a number, but like I said, I was surprised last week and they almost, nearly double covered that one.
Yeah, that 19 game was an interesting game. I thought Auburn had a shot in that game to pull off an upset maybe, or to win that game, and Georgia's defense was fantastic for three quarters, and then I think they got a little soft. Auburn got some momentum, and it got tight there at the end. All right, all the talk in this game, I mean, is about Georgia's defense. Georgia's defense has been unbelievable this year, 4.5 points a game. And from Auburn's point of view, an up and down offense, you can kind of disregard the stats when it comes to Auburn's offense to some degree because they played Alabama State and Akron. So when you see like scoring offense, 11th in the country or whatever they are, take that with a grain of salt because they played two games where they scored 60. And so, I mean, talk to me about Georgia's defense. I've watched a little bit of them. The defensive front's fantastic. I mean, if you had a weak spot in that defense, what would it be if there are any?
Man, it's hard to find one, like you said. This defense has been absolutely incredible to watch so far, and is if they can keep up what they've done through 5 games, they're going to finish among some of the best in college football, and that says a lot. I mean, I think Kirby's been asked, if where this defense ranks among some of his best. He coached some really good ones at Georgia, and I'm sure he's coached some really great ones at Alabama. Yeah. And so, I think it's too early to kind of rank this one compared to some of his other defenses. That 2011 Alabama defense is one that comes to mind. And the way that they played, so physically, that LSU game where it was 9-6, that low scoring affair there. I think Georgia, from what they've been able to do so far this year, they've allowed 23 points on the year. 7 of those you can chalk up to Carson Beck, third string quarterback, and a backup pick 6. So defense and special teams has allowed 16. Well, they've scored more than that. They've have 2 pick sixes on defense, had a block punt that was recovered in the end zone on Saturday. So, if you're just looking at the defense and special teams, Georgia has won the season, scored more than they've allowed on defense and special teams. And so that says a lot. I mean, like you said, up front, this team is big and athletic in that front seven with Jordan Davis is probably the biggest name up there, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Coming in at 340 pounds, 6'6". He plugs up the middle is a huge part in what Georgia does to stop the run. But this season, he's been a big part of what Georgia has been able to do to affect the quarterbacks as well. You've seen him pick up some quickness. Devontae Wyatt is another guy that he had a sack and a half on Saturday against Arkansas, really, putting the pressure on them. Trayvon Walker, Jalen Carter, guys that can sometimes get forgotten, but are, former 5-star players coming in as kind of reserves as fresh legs for Georgia on defense. It says a lot when those are the guys that are coming off the sidelines to relieve some of the guys like Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt. At the linebacker position, it's Nakobe Dean and Channing Tindall. Those two guys. Dean is who you expected him to be so far this season. He was the leader of that defense last year, especially when Monty Rice was banged up. And you've seen him be that leader in the middle of the defense this year. You've seen Channing Tindall grow into one of the best players on this defense, in my opinion. The way that he and Quay Walker, two senior guys, the way that they are able to get sideline to sideline. I wouldn't quite say that he's on the level of Roquan Smith, but the way that these linebackers move, around the field is up there. That's probably the best example of Georgia linebackers moving around the field with that kind of speed. And this is some of the best play I've seen since then. On the outside, Adam Anderson, Nolan Smith, guys that are affecting the quarterback as well. Anderson leads the team with 3 sacks. I believe Nolan Smith has 2 and 2.5. And so, it's interesting to see. I'm curious what you think here, Justin. How do you think, with what Georgia has been able to do defensively, affecting the quarterback and putting offenses in uncomfortable situations? I'm curious what you think here about how Auburn matches up there.
I have no idea. No, for real. Like, Georgia's defense is so good. It's hard to find good matchups. Auburn's offense has been inconsistent. They've done things well at times, and then they haven't at times. And so it's hard to find something. It's hard to find something on Auburn's offense that they're going to be able to consistently do well. They obviously have 2 really good running backs, but the offensive line has had good moments and bad moments. So they did well against Penn State. I mean, Penn State's got a good defense and a good front seven, and Auburn really did pretty well, 190 yards rushing. But then the last 2 games, I think teams have keyed on Tank Bigsby, and he hasn't done much the last 2 games. Now, Jarquez Hunter's made some plays, but the running game has taken a hit the last 2 games. Now, they've made plays in the running game when they needed to, but it hasn't been consistent. The passing game is just kind of really, it's a committee thing. So it's hard to, it's not like Auburn has a guy at wide out where you say, that guy can make plays. I mean, it's really going to be a committee thing. I almost wonder if somebody like Bo Nix, and you see what he does against, LSU, right? You see some of the plays he's capable of making. You almost wonder if something like that is your best shot against a team like Georgia. I mean, you think about what hurts Alabama, right? Those mobile quarterbacks, the quarterbacks that can create some kind of chaos sometimes. Georgia's so good on defense that you almost wonder maybe somebody like Bo Nix, now it could go the other way. It could completely be a disaster. But it's almost, it's like, well, if somebody like Bo Nix can scramble a little bit, make some chaotic plays where it's not there, Georgia's got everything covered, but he makes a play, that might be some of their best opportunities to move the ball. The problem with that is you can't count on it. You can't plan for it. You don't know when it's going to happen. And it could easily go the opposite direction and get you in a lot of trouble. So, I thought Brian Harsin had an interesting quote. And it's true. This week they asked about the Georgia defense, and he said, mean, obviously, he's like, they're fantastic. He said all the right things. But it was funny. He was like, look, we still got a scheme. Like, we can't just give up. Like, we can't just go in and go, well, they're really good, so we'll just kind of praise it. We still got to scheme it up. We still got to have a plan. We still got to watch what they do. We still got to try to find tendencies. Like, we got to approach this like they can be scored on like anybody else, which is true. You know, so that's the way you have to approach it. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to hurt. You know, the only thing about Georgia's defense is maybe Auburn can show them something they haven't seen. I don't know what that is exactly. You know, you look at that Clemson game and you thought, whoa, right? Well, Clemson's offense is really, now they're just bad. I don't know what's going on with them. Arkansas is the best offense Georgia faced. I've seen a little bit of Arkansas. I'm not a big believer in KJ Jefferson. Like, I think he's okay as a passer. I don't know. Is there anything that Auburn presents from your angle that Georgia hasn't seen at all? Whether it's a talented the running backs, or you know, it's a road game. I guess Georgia's played the Clemson neutral site. You know, that atmosphere could certainly be different for them this year. But I don't know. I think somebody like Bo Nix is maybe one of their better opportunities to just create some chaos and make some plays, because it's hard to see Auburn doing anything consistently. I think their best offense is going to have to be their defense. Their defense is going to have to play lights out and create some good field position, and then hope the offense can, you know, get good field position, make a couple plays, and then you got Anders Carlson, who's one of the best kickers in the country, and maybe you can score some points there to at least hang in the game. I kind of see this game as 2 games in one for Auburn. The first game is the first 3 quarters. I think they need to get it to the fourth quarter, and then the fourth quarter is the second game for Auburn. I don't think they need to look at it like how they win the game. I think they need a game plan and figure out, how do we get it to halftime? How do we get it to the third quarter, midway through? How do we play smart so that when going into the fourth quarter at home, in that kind of environment, are we within 10? You know, could it be 23 to 30? Could it be 20 to 10? Could it be 20 to 7 where you still feel like you're in it, and then go from there?
Yeah. And I'm with you there. I mean, to me, if I'm Auburn, I've almost got to look at it at, you know, getting, you know, hanging with Georgia quarter. But if you look at what the Bulldogs have done the last couple of weeks, I mean, it was Vanderbilt, but they put up 35 points in you know, a blink of an eye. Last week against Arkansas, it was 21 points. You know, that is where Georgia has really, you know, stepped on the opponent and you know, they've gotten ahead and they've played ahead. So I'm with you there. I think Auburn's got to, you know, have that mentality of games within the game. You know, going back to what you were saying about Bo Nix, I do think that is an area where Auburn could give Georgia some trouble. You know, I don't know that they've played a quarterback as mobile as him. And you saw it at times. Mike Wright, the quarterback for Vanderbilt, gave them some trouble, but he didn't have the passing ability that Bo Nix has. So you knew that he was going to run. You know, and I think that ability to do both things that Bo Nix has is what could give Georgia some trouble. You know, and like you said, it's kind of that chaos of you know, Bo running around. I mean, that play against LSU, the touchdown to Tyler Fromm is what sticks with me when I think about Bo Nix. That is characteristic Bo Nix right there. His ability to make plays, extend plays, and make plays. But like you said, it has the the potential to go south really quickly too. And so that's what's going to be really interesting to see is whether Georgia gets beat on some of those or makes Bo Nix pay for you know, trying to do too much.
And you brought up an interesting point. It's another thing to watch for, and that is you know, Georgia's ability so far to jump on teams. Well, Auburn's been the opposite, especially the last 2 games. Penn State was pretty even throughout. Penn State jumped out. Auburn came back. It was a pretty good back and forth game. But the last 2 games, Auburn has come out of the gates not good. Obviously, the Georgia State game was just an atrocious first half. And then the first quarter against LSU was terrible. The scheme on defense was soft. I mean, they allowed gosh, that first quarter, I think LSU had about 160 spot, 60, 70 yards of offense. And Auburn got down 13-0 in that game. The last three quarters, Auburn won the last three quarters against LSU, but that first quarter was not good. And then every quarter after that, Auburn's defense gave up less yards and less yards and less yards, and they came back and won. And Brian Harsin was asked about that, and he was like, "Yeah, we have to fix that." He's like, I don't know exactly. He's like, but we have to come out of the gate with whatever, more energy, whatever it might be. He kind of brought up early in the game, especially first quarters, you always see it. That's the times where generally the offense has got scripted plays and all that stuff. And so he kind of made the comment about being prepared, and guys need, first quarter, you need to be prepared for anything and everything, because that's when some of that stuff's going to come out scripted. You would expect the offense to be somewhat clean in those first few drives because they probably already know what they're going to run. And so anyway, that's been a problem for Auburn the last two games, and they're at home. But this is, you don't want to come out of the gate this kind of underdog with the way Georgia's been playing and go down 14-0, because Georgia's going to be licking their chops going, yeah. And Auburn's going to be thinking, well, shoot, maybe we can't beat these guys. It just creates a problem. You're at home, and maybe you have an opportunity to get back in it, but that's just, you can't start a game like that against Georgia and have a prayer of winning, really.
And quite frankly, we referenced that 2019 game earlier. That's how that game went. Georgia got ahead, was up 21-0 there. I believe it was, or had a chance to make it 21-0 at least. But, they got ahead and were able to withstand that Auburn comeback there. And so, like you said, it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. If there's one thing I know about, that matchup between the Auburn offense and this Georgia defense, I know that those two guys that are leading those units, Kirby Smart leading that Georgia defense. I know he's not the defensive coordinator, but he takes a lot of pride in the way that his defense plays. And Mike Bobo leading that offense for Auburn. Two friends. I know that each of them would like to get the best of the other there. So I guess let's flip to the other side of the ball, unless you've got any other thoughts on that matchup.
No, not really. I mean, I think it's just going to be a tall task for Auburn. I think you got to hope for the home field to maybe create some plays and Bo Nix to make some plays and hang around. But yeah, let's talk about the other side, because I think that's Auburn's best chance to stay in the game.
Yeah, to me, looking at it from the Georgia side of things, the big storyline coming into this game is the health of JT Daniels. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? And if he doesn't, how is Stetson Bennett going to play? Daniels, for the Auburn listeners that may or may not know, Daniels has missed 2 games this year, missed the UAB game with a oblique strain, and then missed this last game against Arkansas with a grade 1 lat strain. So he's been limited in what he's been able to do. Stetson told us after the game on Saturday that he was the starter all week long last week. JT was very limited in what he was able to do. And when we talked to Kirby and saw a little bit of practice yesterday, he told us that JT was not going to be throwing on Monday. So my expectation would be that Stetson Bennett is going to start. I think it's very difficult, with what Kirby preaches. And if you don't practice, you don't play. If you're not performing in practice, you're not going to be playing on Saturdays. If JT Daniels can't be throwing on Monday, and we, just left a press conference with him. He said he did some soft toss today, so he was doing a little bit more today than he did yesterday. But if you're not, fully confident in your quarterback's ability to throw the ball, I think you got to go with the other guy. And that other guy is someone that they feel very confident in. I mean, he's got 2 top 10 wins under his belt, one this past Saturday and one last season over Auburn. It's a guy who's Stetson Bennett and who's been around the program for several years now and knows how to get it done. I think he's got a little bit former walk-on, so he's got a little bit of a gunslinger mentality to him, but at the same time, he provides a lot of poise on this offense. Justin, how do you think that Auburn could give Stetson some trouble if it is him that lines up behind center?
Yeah. By the way, I think Georgia's capable of winning the national championship with Stetson Bennett. I mean, he's plenty good enough with that Georgia team, with what you got around him. He's a quality player, and you don't have to be a superstar with what Georgia's put together. So he's just got something about him. He just gets the job done. I think for Auburn, they're going to have to continue on some of the success they had against LSU in pressuring the quarterback. They did a pretty good job of that the last 3 quarters. I think they ended that game with about three sacks and, maybe 6, 7, 8 hurries or pressure, something like that. Hit Max Johnson a few times. So they're going to have to continue to do that. Colby Wooden at the defensive tackle position, Derek Hall, Iko Leota, who's the transfer from Northwestern. They did a pretty good job of pressuring Max Johnson. That's got to continue. The way Auburn's defense plays this year, it's a little different from what you've seen the past few years under Kevin Steele, where it was all man-to-man. This year you're going to have – it's probably a 50-50 or maybe a 60-40 split in favor of zone over man. And so that's caused Auburn some problems. They haven't communicated great at times in the secondary. They've given up some busted plays and some big plays just because they let guys run free. And so we'll see if they've got that cleaned up. They did pretty good in the last 3 quarters against LSU. We'll see if they can continue that. But because they play a little bit of zone, that pressure's got to be there. Against Penn State, it wasn't. That's why that quarterback had such a good game. They were playing soft and they weren't getting the kind of pressure. So that guy, they kept everything in front of him, but that guy was 28 of 32, Sean Clifford. So that's the deal about Auburn's defense, is they've got to figure out that balance of rushing. And what I mean by is against LSU, they kind of went to more of a speed rush front defensive line. They had a defensive tackle in there, Derek Hall, who's edge, but then they put in kind of 2 other edge guys. So they went a little bit undersized because LSU couldn't run the ball. And what isn't that good running the football? Well, Georgia can. And so that's going to be the other challenge for Auburn is, okay, how can they get the right guys in there to get pressure, but also deal with the running game? Because Tony Fair, who's the transfer from UAB and is 340 pounds, he's a plugger. He's not going to really get pressure. And then Marcus Harris, the transfer from Kansas, who's a good player, he's their other defensive tackle, in kind of mix up player. He can get pressure, but he's not as good as, when they go undersized. And so that's going to be the balance, is how can they stop the run and also get pressure without bringing in the house? And then of course you got Owen Papo, who, Georgia fans know, he may not play. He's been banged up. He didn't play against LSU, and that would be a big loss against a team like Georgia. Zacoby McClain should be healthy and is obviously an animal, but Papo's a big, strong, physical guy that you need in a game like this. And so that's a guy they really need. Auburn's secondary is getting better. They're getting more healthy. Jalen Simpson, their third corner, is back. He's a good player. So for Auburn, it's about communication. If they can cut down the busted assignments and get that figured out, they're a good defense. Really, the things they've given up this year have been busted assignments part. When they aren't doing that, they're a pretty sound unit. And at home, I'd like to think Auburn's defense can keep them in the game, but I think the key is going to be, can they really stop the run? They've got a good rush defense. They haven't really been challenged like Georgia will challenge them. Penn State's, they got some ability, but they're not a juggernaut. LSU's struggling. And so that's going to be the key. Can Auburn, against their first real challenge against the run, can they hold up? If they can, then I think they can hang around. The crowd will help them and things like that, but they're going to have to. They can't just be okay on Saturday and give up. If Georgia scores 24, like I just don't. It's hard to imagine Auburn's offense without help from the defense, without good field position, maybe without a turnover. If their average starting positions like their own 30, 25 to 30, it's hard to imagine Auburn scores enough points to win this game. So the defense has to play well, and they've got to create some good field position for Auburn to win. They just have to.
Yeah, well, and you talk about that starting field position. I remember in that 2019 game, Jake Camarda, Georgia's punter, who is shown to be a weapon, was a dominant force in that game, earned SEC Special Teams Player of the Week. I believe he punted 8-9 times in that game and was able to flip the field.
That was such a weird game.
It was.
Georgia had 3 drives in that game, and they were the touchdown drive. That's it. I think they scored 3 touchdowns and then punted every other time. But those 3 touchdown drives they had, they made plays and scored. If they weren't scoring, they were literally going 3 and out. It was a very that was not a game.
Very weird. But, going back to what you were saying about Georgia's run game, you give a lot of credit to them. And that's quite frankly something that a lot of people on the Georgia beat don't. And some Georgia fans don't. Georgia has been known as this ground and pound RBU over the last several years, but under Todd Monken, they've tried to air it out a little bit more. Certainly with JT Daniels, you haven't necessarily seen the 300-yard passing games before Monken and Daniels. And that combo, Georgia has one thing that stands out to me about Georgia on the ground is they have set and topped their season high in each game. Obviously, they set it against Clemson. They top it next week against UAB. They top it the next week against South Carolina. They top that against Vanderbilt. And in the process there, they topped 200 yards for the first time. And this past Saturday, they handed the ball off 57 times, carried for 273 on the ground, 3 touchdowns. The one thing that stands out to me, though, is that Georgia has not had a dominant, a single dominant back. They haven't had a 100-yard rusher. I believe the most that they've had this season was Zamir White for 73, 74 yards against Clemson. And so, they haven't had a ton of big plays. Their biggest play on the ground has been 24 yards. And prior to this past game, when James Cook tied that, it was from Ladd McConkey, who was a wide receiver on a speed sweep. So, it's interesting. They go 4-5 deep at that position. Zamir White, James Cook are the 2 headliners, but you've got Kendall Milton, you've got Kenny McIntosh. Dejan Edwards is a guy who's seen a lot of run, more so in some of these, blowout type games, but he's fully capable of contributing if called upon, and so it's very interesting to see, how Georgia has progressed in the run game. The offensive line really took it upon themselves to set the tone last week against Arkansas. And granted, it was a very different front that they were facing. 3 down linemen, 8 guys dropping back into pass coverage. So they knew that they were going to ground and pound, and they knew that that's how they were going to win that game. And so they took it upon themselves and did that. They moved the line of scrimmage. It's going to be interesting to see if Auburn sells out on the run. If Stetson Bennett is asked to make some plays with his arm. He wasn't asked to do that last week. He threw the ball 11 times, was efficient, 7 of 11 for 74 yards. But he wasn't asked to make game-changing plays. It was hand the ball off on the first down, hand the ball off on second down. And if Georgia was close enough to hand the ball off on third down, they did that too. Really it was, the only times that Bennett was asked to throw the ball was in some 3rd and long situations. So certainly going to be interesting to see. One more thing I'm going to say here is, and you mentioned it with the crowd. This is the first time Georgia has faced a true road environment. Like you said, it was 50-50 in Charlotte. Vanderbilt was more Georgia fans than it was, black and gold there. Quite frankly, looking back at Georgia's road games in the past, this might be the first time they've faced a true road environment since the last time they traveled to Auburn, because after that they played Georgia Tech. I mean, that was a lot of Georgia fans there. And then you had the whole 2020 season, and the only true road game they've played this year is Vanderbilt. So it's going to be interesting to see how Georgia handles that. Like you said, I think that Stetson Bennett is a guy that has a lot of poise. There's something different about him. So I think if he's the one leading the offense, he's going to know how to handle it and handle that road atmosphere. But it's not just him. It's the guys all around him. Justin, I don't know if y'all are going to do a podcast later in the week, or give away score predictions on your site. But, what are your thoughts, in terms of the score, maybe even using that 14.5 point spread? What are you thinking there in terms of predictions?
Now, by the way, I did predict Auburn to win at LSU. I couldn't exactly pinpoint why, but I just had a feeling. I thought they would lose at Penn State. Oh, I mean, this is an awfully tall task for Auburn. You know, I, assuming Auburn's defense plays well, assuming they play well at home, don't get beat on some plays that give up easy touchdowns or something. They might give up a play, but let's say it doesn't result in a touchdown. If they play well, I think Auburn's defense can hold Georgia to probably, when the game still matters. I think they could hold Georgia to 20, 21 while the game is still in doubt. I mean, if it gets out of hand, Georgia could tack on late. But let's say when the game still matters, I think let's say late third, fourth, I could see them holding Georgia to 20, 21 points at the time. It's hard to see where Auburn scores, let's say, the 24 plus that I think it'll take for them to win. Unless Auburn's defense plays out of their mind and holds Georgia to 14, out of nowhere. Okay, well, then that's a different ball game. Could Auburn scratch out 17 at home, even against that Georgia defense? Well, yeah, probably. I mean, they could. It's tough. I mean, I don't know that Georgia covers. If Georgia covers, it'll be Auburn turning the ball over. I think it'll be Bo Nix. It'll be making some mistakes. If Georgia covers that game and Auburn has no turnovers, I will be thoroughly impressed with Georgia, because that'll just be really impressive. So I think Georgia probably, practical mind says they win this game, 24-10, 27-10. It just depends. Auburn needs turnovers. Auburn needs some of these things in this game that you can't predict. For me to pick Auburn to win, I would have to be predicting some things to happen that I can't possibly really predict. That Auburn's not as good. They're not as consistent on offense. And so it's hard to just say, well, here, Auburn's going to pull it out. They're going to have some things happen. Stetson Bennett throws 2 interceptions. Maybe Auburn gets a pick 6. That kind of thing that changes the game that you can't predict. So the important thing is I think Auburn will be in the game. I think midway through the third quarter, we'll be saying Auburn's still in the football game. And from that point, then what do you do? Do you turn Bo Nix loose? Do you play conservative early, get to a point where you feel like you're in it, and then tell Bo, okay, take some chances now? And then with that, who knows, right? It's one of those things like the band's playing one way or another. So that's why I think it's a game of 2 games. I think keep Bo Nix under control, stay in the game, and then get it to a point where you can say, all right, let's kind of throw caution to the wind. We have to, and then who knows? And then let's see what happens. That's kind of my take. I know it's I hate doing scores because I just don't know. That's just sort of my feel on how it would have to go for Auburn to win the game.
Yeah, I feel like you read my mind there with that 24-10. You threw that 24 number out there earlier, and like you said, I feel like this one it's not going to be a blowout. Like you said, if Georgia is covering without forcing a turnover, this team is really, really, really impressive. I think that 24-10 number is probably pretty good in terms of late third quarter, early fourth quarter. I could see Georgia, if it does end up being that kind of game plan where you let Bo, let him loose late in the game, maybe Georgia, makes a big play. You've got to bring some more pressure on defense or something, and Georgia capitalizes. So I think that 24-10, 31-10, that's kind of where my mind is at with Georgia winning there.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be an interesting. I think it's going to be a challenge on both sides. I think Georgia. I think this. Who would have thought Clemson being the first game that I would have said I think this is going to be their biggest challenge of the year. But given what's happened with Clemson, I think this will be the biggest challenge of their year so far. And obviously it'll be Auburn's. And so I think for Auburn, man, look, you're the underdog. It's an opportunity to learn a lot about how far you've come in 5 games. It's a good opportunity for Brian Harsin and this staff to see what they've got, especially Harsin. Mason's been in the league. Bobo's been in the league, but Harsin hasn't. So it'll be a good opportunity for him to go up against somebody like Georgia and Kirby Smart. And just a good opportunity for this Auburn team to try to figure out how far they've come. They've played up to the competition. They played down to Georgia State, but they played up to Penn State on the road and obviously beat LSU. And so we'll see if they can play up to the competition again. Man, it'll be a great atmosphere. Georgia's going to have 15,000 people. They're going to bring people. Those people are going to find their way into the stadium. I think Auburn obviously will be sold out on their end, so it should be a fun atmosphere. But Palmer, thanks for coming on, man. Again, DawgsHQ.com. For all the Auburn fans, go read on Georgia. Go get your information there. And for Georgia fans, AuburnLive.com. We've got some articles up from Brian Harsin and the players and stuff like that. We didn't even talk about tight ends. We won't talk about that. I'm sure Georgia can figure out how to cover the tight end. That's probably Auburn's best option at this point on offense. All right, dude. Hey, what's your Twitter? Because I need to follow you if I don't.
Yeah, it's at Palmer Thombs on Twitter. Okay. Again, really excited to see this game and this matchup. But excited to head on down to the Plains and meet you in person on Saturday.
Yeah. Let's do it, man. Bring your mask. Good grief. But we'll do it, man. It'll be fun to see 2:30 CBS. Big game for every game's Georgia. Every game's big for Georgia. You're trying to win the national title. And certainly Auburn try to defend your home field and at least put on a good showing. All right, Palmer, thanks so much. DawgsHQ, AuburnLive.com. We'll see everybody. Bye.